All right, comics lovers. Sorry this video is so late. This was supposed to be my May update on my comic collection, and the first couple of weekends in May were nuts with cottage weekend and then my ball hockey tournament. I didn't even get in to buy my comics until mid to late May. So, and then it's been crazy in other ways since then. So, and there was a lot of issues because I was so late getting there. So, so it took me a while to read through them. So, but I'm done. I'm ready. This is May's comics review, not June's. And so I'm guessing June's is going to be a fair amount shorter because I went so late in the month in May that there maybe won't be that many issues for me in June. But anyways, let's get to May's haul. First up, issue 8 of Void Rivals. This one kicks off with a bit of a flashback for Celila, the Zertonian, who is thinking about a past experience with, it looks like her little brother maybe, talking about their mother and the future of Zertonia, and then they get in a bit of an argument and they fight each other, and then kind of that memory kind of ends when she comes back to the current time with her and the Agorian Derek. These two have been on the lam for a while. They're walking through the unknown regions or the Badlands or whatever, where nobody ever survives. But the Zertonian leader is like, we're not taking our chances. So he dispatched that warrior that they had in stasis or in storage or whatever at the end of the last issue. He's on his way on some sort of motorcycle thing. And Celila's like, they're talking about what's going to happen. And Celila's like, there's one guy I think they could send after us, and his name is Proxima. And soon enough, Proxima meets up with them and is immediately like, die, both of y'all. And he attacks them, and this big fight ensues. And they're holding their own, but you can tell that Proxima is going to win. He's more than a match for these two. So as he's got Derek kind of held by the neck, the little handroid device that Derek wears releases some sort of charge or whatever, and a big explosion ensues, and it blasts everybody apart. So Derek eventually wakes up, and he's talking to the handroid device on his wrist, and he's like, oh man, hopefully Celila's nearby and that fucking clown is long gone. And handroid's like, oh yeah, no, I pick up no life forms anywhere near. And then they start walking for a little while, and he's like, oh nope, I pick up traces of Celila's armor. So Derek goes and finds her, but she's been in that explosion, that chaos. She ends up falling on some sort of rod or something like that, and it looks like she's impaled through the side or something like that. She's still alive, but that's kind of where the issue ends, and you don't know if she's going to die, if she's going to live, what's going to happen. Where's Proxima? Is he still in the area and going to come back after them? So yeah, bit of a cliffhanger end on, and but as with Empire Strikes Back, there's no such thing as a bad cliffhanger, unless you're hanging off a cliff, actually. Okay, next up, a shitload of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. First up, issue 11 of the ongoing or sub-series of the Saturday Morning Adventures series. In this one, it's kind of finishing up the storyline that's been going on for at least a few issues now, where Shredder has that sword that can cut into the future and the past and everything. So the Turtles are in their lair trying to find an answer to that, and they're trying to replicate the same type of sword with a piece they have left. In the meantime, Shredder's on Long Island, and him and Krang are like working out what they're going to do, and Shredder's like, instead of going to the past with this sword and bringing back the old Technodrome, I'm going to go to the future and bring back an even better Technodrome. So that's what he's doing. So he's cut a rift in time, and a big brand new spanking futuristic Technodrome is coming through. And so after that happens, Johnny gets an alert on some of his equipment saying, oh shit, something's up. So they go and fight Shredder and try and stop this Technodrome birthing from happening. And so they get in a scrap, and they're able to replicate the sword. So Leo brings a sword of his own, but Shredder keeps opening up rifts and sending foot soldiers at them and all that kind of stuff. And so eventually Leo's able to attack Shredder with that sword and open a kind of a reverse rift or something like that, and send the Technodrome back through. And in the process, Shredder gets sent into limbo, sort of thing. And And as the issue ends off, we see Krang and Shredder talking, and Krang trying to do all these different experiments to get Shredder to come back from limbo and be in a physical form on Earth, but it's not working out. So it looks like Shredder, his plans have been foiled for now, at least. Next up was issue 12 of that same series, and Mr. Og, the Supreme Ruler of Dimension Z, is back. If you remember a number of issues ago, he tried to imprison the Turtles and take them to court to trial over some trumped up thing, and so he's back. He wants revenge for them escaping his last trap, and so Mr. Og, we see the issue starts with Mr. Og kind of waxing on how pissed off he is at the Turtles and how this time he's going to get them and get them good. In the meantime, currently the Turtles are fighting some sort of billy goat mutant who's being a pain in the ass. And after they beat him, this little kid with a little beanie hat comes up to them and says, "Hey, I want your autographs. You guys are great." And so they all sign for him, but really it's Mr. Og disguised as a kid, and he gets all their signatures on some sort of contract he has, right? So he whisks them away to Dimension Z, and he's like, "Yeah, you're not going to escape this challenge." And so he throws them into this cave with this dragon. And he gave them a little bit of hint as to defeating it. I can't remember what it was, but they tried fighting it, and they tried doing everything, and then Mikey's like, "Oh shit, we got to do some dancing to tame this dragon." So he's and the dragon loves it, and the dragon calms right down, just enjoys the show, and onwards they move. But Mr. Og is pissed, so he's like, "Okay, I got something good in store for you this time." And this is where it ends. He brings the Turtles to this big arena where they're going to have a battle. The cool thing about it is that their opponents in this arena battle are all sorts of different versions of the Turtles from all the various media franchises they've been in. Different, like the original comic books, so you have the black and white comic book turtle guy, you have all the different TV shows, you have a character from each of those versions, you know, so it's all these different looking turtles from all these different incarnations of the show and the comic book going up against the 4 OG 1987 turtles that are in this series, sort of thing. And that's kind of where it ends, on a bit of a cliffhanger there. So I'm really looking forward to the next issue in that series, because I think that's a really cool idea to kind of showcase all the different turtles in all their splendor, right? Now, then, this was a surprise, and this is what makes the Turtles haul a little bigger this time. There's a new series out, and I don't know why I've already got 3 issues from it. They must have released them really quick in succession, but it's The Untold Destiny of the Foot Clan, featuring Karai mainly. So that's issue 1, and then we got issue 2, and of course issue 3. So as this new sub-series starts off, Karai is working with her Foot Clan members, Bebop, Rocksteady, a couple other mutants, I can't remember their names, Casey Jones, and a girl named Natsu. And she's like, "Guys, we got a job. We have this Chincha Technologies or something like that. They got some tech that we want to steal that could be valuable to us." So they plan this mission to raid this place, and they do really well. They get there, but when they get to the actual device, they find there's some other people already there saying, "We've got it." So somebody else had the same idea. They get in a scrap with these people, and they are members of the Dog Star clan, and they beat Karai senseless. They beat her into almost near oblivion, and she wakes up in the hospital, and she's fighting for her life, sort of thing. All her friends from the Foot Clan are there. They're concerned for her, but her master Toshiro uses magic at the expense of his own life to save Karai and bring her back. And she's like, his sacrifice is not going to be in vain. So she's like, "We're going to bring the Dog Star clan down." So they start, in order to draw the Dog Star clan out, they start hitting at different facilities in areas that they feel are in the Dog Star clan's interests, and try to draw them out, sort of thing. And eventually they do, and they get in a fight with one of the soldiers, and they're kind of robotic. So this thing, they end up beating this thing, but it has a self-destruct. It blows up, but they get some clue from the wreckage. And while the rest of the Foot Clan members stay at the base or whatever, Karai's going out, and she goes, I'm gonna find out where this motherfucker lives, right? So she raids some sort of big building and causes a big ruckus and says, "I want to talk to this guy," and then heads out and heads back to the Foot Clan. And once she gets back to the Foot Clan, there's somebody there waiting for her, but there's actually not somebody there waiting for her. It's a hologram being projected by this little device. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the leader of the Dogstar clan. So he's like, I just want to talk for now. You know, you wanted our attention, now you've got it. Hear me out. So he tells a tale of how the Foot Clan is rightfully his, and he goes through the history of the Foot Clan and its origins, and cries like, I already know all this information. And he's like, well, what you didn't know is that this was a lie, blah blah blah, this actually happened. He says, the Foot Clan is mine by rights, but I'm a reasonable man. If you want to join and stay in it and take be under my command and take my orders, that's fine. And Cry's like, fuck you, right? So the little device self-destructs, and Cry's like, shit. So she's like, these apparent lies in the origins of the Foot Clan are driving her a little bit crazy. So she goes into this weird meditative trance where she contacts the afterlife or something like that to look for her master Toshiro and get some answers on what this guy was saying. And so he gives her a bit of clarity, but basically it comes down to they both have a right to lead the Foot Clan. It's whoever's will is stronger. So she comes out of the trance at the end of the issue and goes, I went looking for answers and I found them. Let's go. Right? So something's gonna happen in the next issue. I think they're gonna really try and take it to the Dogstar clan, but we'll find out in June. Last up, the big 150 issue 150 of the Turtles ongoing series finally arrived, and it sees an end to the current story arc. We left off in the future with future Michelangelo having Donnie and Venus, and was Evil Bob there, or was he following them? I can't remember. Yeah, he must have been following them because he would have caused a ruckus. So yeah, that's true. That's correct. So Mikey and Venus are talking to future Michelangelo, and they've been filling him in. And at the end of the last issue, he's like, he wanted to stay and hang out with him, and they're like, Mikey, there's something serious going on right now. We need our answers, and we need to go. And but soon enough, future Bob has found them and is coming after them. So Mikey's like, you two escape through the portal, I'll hold this clown off and buy you guys some time. So that's what happens. When they go through this portal, they are taken back to the exact moment where the Turtles and Splinter are born. They're in a terrarium, Splinter's on the ground as a rat looking for food, and the mutagen stuff happens. But the only problem is future Bob enters the fray after following them there and kind of interrupts the events, and they're like, shit, we need this to happen or we don't exist, right? So they fight Bob or do whatever, and eventually get the story to unfold as it did originally, and they're born and all that kind of stuff. And eventually they are able to come up with a solution. They also find, while they're there, I can't remember if they go somewhere afterwards, but they find these three turtles that are like really different looking. They're just this blah kind of gray, and they're like, no, we're Donatello's kids. After he kind of lost it and was on his own, he wanted to create families, so he actually drew us on paper, then made a spell that brought us to life. But then he didn't like us because we weren't actually real beings or whatever. So like current Donatello's like, what the fuck? Like, that doesn't sound like me. Like, that's horrible. So through his dealings with these sons of his, actually, or daughters, I can't remember if there was girls and boys, but they come up with a plan on how to beat Armagon and use the sigil, because future Donatello actually shows up and tries to fight them all. But they eventually talk him down and make him see reason about his actions and all that kind of stuff. So he gives them some insight. He gives them a sigil and some stuff about, okay, this is how you could possibly defeat Armagon. So they end up beating Bob, and he doesn't turn back into a human, but something happens to his appearance and he looks really weird. And then they also end up kind of mutating Armagon into another form and then freezing him kind of like in stone or something like that. Like, they couldn't destroy him outright, but they got him into a different form and then froze him. And hopefully that holds up and the threat is dealt with. But I think that it should be, because this is the road to 150 is now over, and that's the end of that whole storyline. I was talking about this the other day. Like, if I had to cut out one comic series of all the ones I'm reading right now, it would probably be the Turtles. I love Turtles comics, but this latest storyline with Armagon and all that stuff, and all the future and past jumping and stuff like that, like, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I find when you start doing that stuff and bouncing all around, it's just, I don't know, it kind of loses its appeal a little bit for me. So if, G.I. Joe and Transformers are must-haves, whereas the Turtles, I really want them, but if I had to cut one out, I'd cut out the Turtles, unless the next, wherever they go from after 150, when they restart with the next issue, wherever they're going to get a fresh start, they're kind of going to come up with a new storyline. We'll see where that goes, and maybe that will hold a little more interest to me than this whole Armagon thing. But yeah, I guess we'll find out in June on that as well. But not saying I dislike the Turtles. I love the Turtles. It's one of my favorite franchises of all time. But I just didn't quite love the storyline that was the most current one here. So yeah, like I said, maybe a nice reset will do. Fingers crossed. Third up, Transformers. We got a few issues this time, and the first one's a little different. It's not necessarily just part of the Transformers franchise. It covers a few different things, and but the cover has Transformers on it, so I'm going to put it under the Transformers banner for this time. So, issue number 1 of the Energon universe. So, the Void Rivals series has this Energon universe subtitle to it. So, these things are all linked together, and we've seen in the Void Rivals series that a couple of Transformers have shown up here and there. I think Jetfire was in there. Maybe there was somebody else, I can't quite remember, but we know at least the Transformers are linked to the Void Rivals series. So this Energon Universe issue 1 has 3 kind of shorter stories to it that link to various other franchises. The first one shows Optimus and Megatron fighting inside the Ark while it's still in space. There's all sorts of blasting going on, and Optimus gets the upper hand on Megatron, and Megatron's like kind of hanging on to the airlock before he gets blown out into space. And Starscream's there fighting as well, and Starscream takes the opportunity to blast the shit out of Megatron instead of Optimus Prime, and because you always know the power struggle there. We always know Starscream was scheming to take over the Decepticons, even though he always failed. So that was his chance there, and he blasted Megatron, and Megatron fell, I'm assuming, actually, you know what? I'm assuming to Earth, but I don't know this, because he ends up with some weird-looking alien race at first, humanoid, but not human. And we see Megatron kind of captured and hooked up to all these devices, and he's pissed, and he wakes up, and he's like, bleh! And he eventually escapes, and we see these aliens go after him, and we see Globulus enter the scene. So we know this is a G.I. Joe tie-in, because Globulus is part of that race of beings who birthed Cobra Commander and made him what he is. And so we see Megatron fight out of this facility where Globulus had him hooked up. And just before that story arc ends, he says, "Starscream, your ass is mine," right? So he's going out for revenge. The middle story featured 2 of the alien beings. I'm not sure if the lizard guy was actually in the Transformers cartoon, but the pig guy was. These 2 kind of alien beings. One looks like a humanoid lizard, the other a humanoid pig creature. Lizardo is the lizard guy, and then Skuxoid or something like that is the pig guy. He comes into play later in the Transformers series. After the movie, he deals with the Quintessons a lot. So he meets up with this lizard guy, and they talk about Skuxoid was supposed to get some sort of alloy from this lizard, but he lost it to some beings, and he's pissed and whatever. And eventually we see that Hot Rod, or Rodimus Prime, I guess at the time, is there, and he's been dealing with Lizardo, and he talks to Skuxoid, and he's like, I need to know where you found this alloy, because it's I'm chasing a former ally of mine who is trying to save our planet, chasing some Cybertronian legend, and I believe this thing you found, this alloy you found, has something to do with it, and I think it's something to do with the Zertonians from Void Rivals. So we see Hot Rod, or Rodimus Prime, taking off after dealing with these two aliens, and we see some sort of droid or robot reporting back to its master, observing this exchange between these three beings and saying, yep, it's just as you thought, sort of thing. So I don't know what's going on there, but hopefully we'll find out in the next Energon Universe issue, if there indeed is one. I don't know if this is going to be something that's just a tie-in to the other things and it's a one-shot, or if it's going to be an ongoing thing, but we'll find out in June, hopefully, right? Anyways, the third story is a G.I. Joe based story, and it shows Duke approaching Colonel Hawk with an idea to recruit the Baroness to their side, and Hawk is like, what the fuck, like, she's a Cobra, or I mean, she's an international terrorist, she's bad, like, we can't have her working for us. And as these two are having this discussion, we see Baroness's current whereabouts. She's being chased by somebody in body armor, and Duke swoops in and saves her in a motorcycle and whisks her away and converts her to the Joe team. And the people that were trying to capture Baroness, we find out once she takes the armor off, it's Lady J, who's already a member of the Joe team. And she reports back to Hawk, like, why did you have Duke kind of want to recruit her or whatever, but we were trying to take her in? And Hawk was like, it was all part of the plan. I don't want Duke to know that we're forming two teams. So 2 G.I. Joe teams. I don't know where this is going, but it's very interesting. And the tie-ins that are all going on with this Void Rival storyline, the Transformers are involved. Obviously, G.I. Joe is going to be involved somehow. So I like how this is all going, how everything's intermingling and whatnot. So I can't wait to see, you know, how it all continues to unfold. They must have some sort of big fucking whiteboard where they got charts like, ah, fuck, this is tied into this and whatever, we can't do this because this has already happened. It must be hard to keep track of all that shit, but I'm glad they are. So next up, the Straight Up Transformers, the newer series from Image, issues number 7 and issue number 8. So in these ones, we see a small team of Autobots on Cybertron, Huffer, Warpath, Cup, and Alita 1, fighting the Decepticons, and most of them get wiped out. The only one who survives is Alita 1, and she fights her way into this facility and finds this ravaged Autobot. You can't even tell who it is. I have a feeling it's maybe Ultra Magnus, but he's just, it looks like he's been kept in captivity and abused. You can't, he's just decrepit and falling apart, and you don't know who he is. So she's trying to get to him and get him out of there, whoever he is. And then also, this one kind of bounced around a lot. There's lots of different things going on. There is a challenge for the Decepticon leadership, because without Megatron around, Starscream had assumed leadership, but Soundwave kind of stands up to him, and the two kind of come at odds and decide. Soundwave decides to challenge his leadership, and Thundercracker's like, no, he challenged you, Starscream, you gotta fight him, whatever. And Soundwave is pissed because Starscream blasted Ravage, and that's another reason why Soundwave wants to take over. So he beats the Christ out of Starscream and rips out some of his parts, and then kicks him into a pit of lava, and the parts, he says, well, these will be used to fix Ravage. And so then all the Constructicons, Thundercracker, Rumble, they all kind of kneel to their new leader, who is Soundwave, which is awesome. And then we flip over to Carly, who is pissed because she's pissed at Cliffjumper because he couldn't pull the trigger on Starscream, and Starscream then went to do more damage to the Autobots. So RC tries to talk to Carly and relates some stories of her past, her and her mentor Ultra Magnus, as some of their experiences, like, you know, don't blame Cliff and whatever. Tries to bring her around, but she's not really having any of it. And then we see Optimus Prime trying to approach Spike and apologize and whatever, and Spike's like, you know what, Prime, everything that happens is not your fault. I just need some time to adjust, because he's in a wheelchair after being shot, and his dad's dead, you know. So, and Carly's dad is dead too. Like, everybody's dead. So they're just having some trouble adjusting to the circumstances. And Prime is suffering some sort of flashbacks and stuff too, and he's not quite right. And back at Autobot HQ, Wheeljack is trying to get Skywarp to cooperate, because the Decepticons savaged Skywarp earlier in the series and plugged some of his remains into the Autobot computer Teletran 1 to try and revive some of the Decepticons. So Skywarp's pissed off that he's just part of this computer now and can't fly or do anything. So he's not quite cooperating with Wheeljack and the other Autobots. And they talk about strategy, and they're like, well, we need to find the Decepticons, but we need to be able to put somebody in the air in order to find them. And Prime, at the end of the first issue there, number 7, says, I think I have an idea for that. And you see him opening some sort of door into a storage facility. And at first I thought it was the aerial bots, but it ends up being Jetfire, who he revives. So then into issue number 8, Carly and Spike are at the beach with RC. Cliffjumper shows up and brings some colas for the kids, and he's like, this is what you do at the beach, you drink cola? Like, he's trying to, you know, get a peace offering and try to get Carly to come around, but she's still not having any of it. And then there's a flash to Cybertron with Elita 1 taking this ravaged robot with her. And he wakes up and he's like, no, just leave me. 150 years of torture, just leave me behind. I'm done, you know. And then we see it flashes to the Decepticons, who are leading some sort of attack on this aircraft carrier. And they basically sink the ship, eradicate the humans, and then eventually they go underwater. Wheeljack continues to fuck around with Skywarp. Carly comes in with a rocket launcher, wants to destroy Skywarp, but they block the missile, the Autobots, and right after that, Skywarp starts regenerating. He fixes Wheeljack's legs, so he starts cooperating and stuff. And then back to the Decepticons, we see them go to the depths of the ocean after sinking this aircraft carrier, and they find the Nemesis, the Decepticon ship that was chasing the Ark in that original how the Transformers came to Earth storyline. And Soundwave's like, well, we can't quite use this ship, but we can call for reinforcements. And right at the end of the issue, we see Soundwave use the communicator, and Shockwave's visage comes up on the screen. So Shockwave is now involved in this whole mess. And they also, inside the Nemesis, they free a prisoner who's been in there a while, and it's Astrotrain, and he's pissed, and he's about to rampage, and he's like, I want that motherfucker who put me in here. And Soundwave's like, Megatron's not here right now, but he's all yours when we locate him, right? So Megatron has wronged Astrotrain, and Astrotrain's out for blood. So they've found a new ally, the Decepticons, and Prime tells Jetfire, we're gonna need you. Jetfire's like, man, I'm done with war. I'm shaken. I'm blah blah blah. I'm blind. I can't see. And Prime kind of soothes him and brings him around, sort of thing. And that's kind of, you know, basically the events of that issue. It'll be interesting to see what other characters they bring in, because I can't remember at the start of this issue, or at the start of this series, if we know what happened to Megatron or not. Because obviously Starscream or Astrotrain's looking for him, and with Soundwave just deposing Starscream and now leading the Decepticons, I have a feeling Megatron will come back to that situation and be like, good job in the meantime, Soundwave. And you killed Starscream? Great. Here's a promotion, you know? And there's also lots of strife going on within the Autobot human camp with Carly and Spike having gone through all this trauma with their fathers dying and adjusting to the fact that there's giant robots living on Earth now. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And also, if Skywarp is cooperating as Teletran 1, will they be able to bring any other Autobots back online, and which characters are going to join the roster in this series as it continues to unfold and evolve. So either way, I love where they've gone with it. There's lots of realism with the violence, you know. In the cartoons back in the day, they're still amazing, but you know, nobody ever got squashed or shot or whatever in Transformers or G.I. Joe, right? But this series with Image really brings a lot of the realism and the accountability. Like people die, you know, which is kind of a cool aspect of this new series as Image has taken it over. So I can't wait to see what comes in June out of the whole Transformers Energon kind of universe. So, and it won't be long now because it already is June. Last, as usual, G.I. Joe. Only 2 issues. First up, issue 5 of the current Duke sub-series. As this one picks up, Duke, Clutch, and who was the other one? Maybe Baroness made their escape from the pit. And so we see Colonel Hawk come up to Clutch after the dust has settled, and he's like, "Where did Duke go in that Sky Striker?" And Clutch is like, "Shove off, boss." And so then it flashes forward to where Duke is right now. He has infiltrated Destro's facility. I can't remember where. And he's stumbled upon a Cobra bat, and he's still convinced that Starscream, the transforming plane robot, is Destro's work. And Destro actually comes to confront Duke as the bat kind of has him tied down, and they start talking, and Duke is blaming him for the death of his friend who Starscream killed. And Destro's like, "Oh, interesting." Says, "Well, this bat is my work, but that transforming plane is not my work." And he's like, "Yeah, maybe we should work together and figure this out." And he offers Duke his hand. Duke takes it and then fucking headbutts him in the steel face, right? Ow! God damn, Duke is a savage. So Destro's like, "Fine, have it your way." And so he leaves Duke with the bat to dispose of Duke. And he tells Scrap Iron or whatever, you know, after the bat kills him, blow up the facility. It'll be a good tax write-off. And they begin to exfiltrate the facility. So Duke ends up beating a bat in hand-on-hand combat on his own after he rips out its head and its spinal column and beats him with it. And Destro and Scrap Iron see the bat go offline before they exit the facility, and they're like, "What? He beat a bat on his own without any weapons? Like, it's crazy." So then they exfiltrate and then blow up the building, and it looks like Duke is still inside of the building when it blows. However, we see news reports afterwards saying, "Oh, Conrad Hauser, Duke, decorated soldier, has perished in this accident," or whatever. We see all these news reporters, but then we actually see Duke pretty beaten up in a hospital bed, and Hawk comes in to talk to him, but Duke is pissed. He's like, "You lied to me, blah blah blah," like. And Hawk is like, "Duke, we had to protect you. Like, you went above and beyond. You've got to see this sort of thing. Like, we believe you now," that kind of thing. And so then Hawk shows Duke a picture of it's Optimus Prime with like his cannon or his blasters going ga 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 in mid battle. And they're like, "We're forming a team to deal with this shit." And Duke is like, "Let's do this." So here comes the origin of the G.I. Joe team, right? To fight off giant transforming robots. Fantastic. Last up, issue 306 of the regular ongoing G.I. Joe series. So in this one, if you remember at the end of the last issue, Serpentor Khan on Cobra Island with all of his mutants had sent a missile after Zartan, who was in the swamp on his little swamp speeder bike. And Zartan escapes that, is able to outmaneuver the missile and sacrifice his speeder in the process. And Dr. Mindbender, he's like, "Great, we got him." And Serpentor Khan is like, "Until we see a body, we don't know nothing. Until we see a bottom." And so then the next scene it flashes to is in Destro's castle, and where the fake Zartan is feeding Destro and Baroness some information about Serpentor Khan is holed up on Cobra Island, but they have no means to get off. Cobra Commander is rallying his troops in Springfield, but during this meeting, some of Destro's allies who are monitoring the situation do a scan on Zartan and find out that he's actually an android. And so Destro is clued in that, oh, this is probably somebody working for Revanche and Serpentor. And in turn, he's like, Baroness is like, let's destroy it, the motherfuckers. And Destro's like, nah, not so fast. We could feed this thing some disinformation and use it to our advantage, right? So then they basically conclude the meeting, and Destro's like, it's good doing business with you. You're going to be a good ally, sort of thing, right? And then after that, there's a quick, brief scene of Snake Eyes running, like not an obstacle course, but one of those courses where like targets pop up, and you either it's a bad guy or a good guy. You got to shoot it or not, like. And he does, of course, a Snake Eyes type job on it. And afterwards, Scarlet's like, "Did you ever not do this the best ever, Snake Eyes?" Um, and then another brief cutscene where Dawn Moreno, the girl who used to be Cobra but converted to the Joes and was eavesdropping on what was going on in Springfield, and her parents still live there, and she was hunkering down with them. Her parents have decided to leave the city but get pulled over, and they're like, we know Dawn was here, like we know. And they're like, no, we're just going to visit my sister and whatever. And then the mom reaches into the glove box to say, yeah, we've got our itinerary, I'll show you to right here. And they're like, she's going for a gun, and they end up shooting them all. So Dawn's parents, I'm assuming, you don't actually see them dead after, but I'm assuming they have reached the netherworld. And then there's another brief cutscene of Revanche kind of monitoring events and planning for what's going on. And then we see a Joe team of Wetsuit, Torpedo, Agent Helix, and Muskrat. No, not Muskrat. Murto, I think his name is, jumping from a plane with a Zodiac into the Gulf of Mexico somewhere and end up on some island where Cobra has a presence. We don't really know what they're up to. And then I think the very last part of the issue is when Zartan gets back to his base in the swamp and talks to all the other Dreadnoks and says, like, Serpentor Khan tried to off me with a missile. You know, chances are if they're coming after me, they're going to be coming after all of us. We should take the fight to them. And then Buzzer at the end suggests, hey, maybe we should work with Destro, right? So I don't know where the Dreadnoks are headed, but the fake Zartan is already dealing with Destro. So maybe the real Zartan should show up and throw in his hand with Destro. So, but who knows where that's going? But either way, I found these issues of Transformers and G.I. Joe, the regular issues, jumped around a lot. Different little storylines all going on at once, and it kind of would do these brief little jumps between them, which I find when I'm trying to recap these things very confusing because it's kind of hard to remember all these little bits and pieces, right? So I sometimes have to go through them again. But either way, the G.I. Joe series is every bit as exciting as the Transformers series. I love those two franchises so much, and I love what Image is doing with them. And I really like a lot of the artwork. I love how they're involving the Dreadnoks a lot too in this latest round of G.I. Joe. Yeah, just like with Transformers, I can't wait to see where Duke and all the other Joes go next. And of course, the Dreadnoks. Who doesn't love the Dreadnoks? Meow.